I wasn't angry when my daughter-in-law reduced my 67th birthday to a sticky note that said, "Bring the sheet cake like always." I just smiled. Because less than 24 hours later, my family called an emergency meeting after seeing my face on TV, and suddenly the old widow with a small pension became the most important person in the room. The note was sitting right next to the coffee maker. Clara smoothed out the piece of paper, staring at the messy handwriting of her daughter-in-law, Chloe. "Saturday is no big deal. Just bring the cake. Cherry sheet cake like always. No happy birthday. No can't wait to see you. Just a mandate for her 67th birthday." Clara folded the note neatly and slipped it into her cardigan pocket. She looked out the window of her modest rented bungalow on the outskirts of Savannah. Since her husband's passing 4 years ago, life had changed drastically. Her son Lucas had moved away, married Chloe, and seemingly forgotten who had financed his college education. Clara wasn't the type to cry. She was a retired accountant. She believed in numbers, facts, and solid structures. When people didn't appreciate her, she quietly drew her boundaries instead of picking fights. Lucas had called earlier, his voice rushed and distracted. "Hey, Mom, Chloe's right. Don't go to any trouble. A simple birthday is plenty." Clara offered a faint smile to the empty room. She knew exactly what Chloe thought of her. To Chloe, Clara was just the old widow with a tiny social security check, someone to be used for free gardening or last-minute babysitting. What Chloe and Lucas didn't know was that Clara's silence about her finances was entirely intentional. She had been harboring a massive secret for the past 3 years, an old historic plantation-style estate nestled in the hills outside the city. She had bought it dirt cheap out of a foreclosure auction and silently restored it using her life savings. On Thursday evening at 6:43 p.m., her phone buzzed. It was a text from Lucas in the family group chat. "Urgent meeting at our place Sunday at 8 p.m. Everyone needs to be there. It's important." Clara didn't delete the notification. She knew exactly why that text had been sent. Thursday morning, a local public television station had aired a feature on the most stunning historic restorations in Georgia. Her estate had been the crown jewel of the segment. The host had estimated its market value at a staggering $5.5 million. Clara had appeared briefly in the interview looking calm, poised, and elegant. Her family's trap had snapped shut before Clara had even said it. She typed a brief reply, "I'll be there." Lucas and Chloe's house was a modern, stark, concrete structure, cold, minimalist, and functional. When Clara pulled up on Sunday evening at precisely 2 minutes to 8, the driveway was packed. Lucas's Mercedes was parked crookedly right next to Chloe's parents' car. Clara parked her unassuming 10-year-old Honda Civic by the curb. She grabbed her black leather purse from the passenger seat. There were no legal threats inside that bag, just raw reality in the form of deed registries and bank statements. Chloe opened the door. Her face, usually masked in cool detachment, wore a wide, almost sickeningly sweet smile. "Clara, we're so glad you're here. Come on in. Everyone's waiting for you." In the living room sat Lucas, Chloe's parents, and Chloe's brother. The air was thick with tension. Lucas looked incredibly nervous, his fingers drumming a frantic rhythm on the armrest of the sofa. Chloe's mother, a woman who usually barely deigned to exchange 2 words with Clara, stood up instantly. "Well, if it isn't our TV star," she gushed with fragile enthusiasm. "That estate on television, Clara, it was absolutely breathtaking." Clara remained standing in the doorway, declining to sit in the armchair they offered. She remembered last Christmas vividly when Chloe had loudly commented that Clara's outdated wardrobe didn't really fit into the modern world. Last month, none of you had time to grab a cup of coffee because my life was too boring for you. Clara said, her voice steady and quiet. Nobody would look her in the eye. Lucas cleared his throat. Mom, please just sit down first. We need to talk about the future. Clara could practically feel the greed in the room. It was as tangible as the heat radiating from the fireplace. She unzipped her purse. She knew these people assumed she had gone deep into debt to acquire that property. They thought the old lady was on the brink of financial ruin. That was their grand hope, because envy can only tolerate another person's success if it's bought with crippling debt. We've been worried sick. Chloe began handing Clara a glass of water, which Clara politely declined. $5.5 million. That is an astronomical amount of money for an older woman to handle by herself. You must be completely over your head, Clara. The mortgages have to be crushing you. Lucas nodded eagerly. Yeah, Mom. Why didn't you tell us we could have advised you? Taking on that kind of risk at your age is incredibly irresponsible. Clara looked around the room, taking in the faux concern painted across the faces of Chloe's parents. She understood the game perfectly. If Clara was drowning in debt, they could swoop in as her saviors take the house off her hands for pennies, or pressure her into selling it way below market value, so they could split the proceeds. What makes you think I have any debt? Clara asked softly. Chloe's father let out a short, cynical laugh. Come on, Clara. Nobody your age buys a property like that in cash. You live off a modest pension. Your late husband's old repair shop barely brought in a dime back in the day. He leaned back, looking smug, as if he had cracked the case. You got taken advantage of. I guess that's why your birthday was such a budget affair, huh? No cash left over. Clara didn't feel a flicker of anger. Instead, she felt a profound sense of clarity. These people didn't know her at all. They had never asked how she spent her time over the last few years, or what quiet real estate investments she had made while living frugally in her little bungalow. They only saw the surface. I invited you all to my birthday, Clara noted. You canceled because it wasn't exclusive or fancy enough for you. A sheet cake in a backyard garden was beneath your dignity. Chloe suddenly found her manicured fingernails fascinating. That's not true. We were just incredibly busy. But this is different. This is important. We want to help you sell the house before the bank comes to foreclose on it. Clara reached into her bag and pulled out a folded document. Without a word, she laid it on the glass coffee table in front of Lucas. It was a certified copy of the property deed. Lucas picked up the paper, his eyes racing across the lines. In the section reserved for liens, mortgages, and encumbrances, there was only a single word: none. This can't be right, Lucas stammered. He handed the paper to Chloe's father, whose face instantly lost all its color. It's entirely unencumbered, the older man whispered. You own this estate free and clear, no bank loans. Clara nodded once. It is paid for. I acquired it 3 years ago for $1.8 million out of a bankruptcy liquidation. The funds came from the sale of my father's logistics company shares. Shares you never bothered to ask about because you assumed his business was worthless. Chloe stared at the paper as if she could burn the words away with her eyes. But the news anchor said it's worth $5.5 million. That doesn't make sense. Clara placed a second document on the table. It was a formal appraisal from a certified independent appraiser dated just last week. The television station's estimate was conservative. The current market value, now that the final restoration phase is complete, is $6.2 million. It has appreciated significantly over the last few months, especially since the Historical Society approved the tax exemptions. An oppressive silence blanketed the room. The ticking of the wall clock was the only sound left. Chloe exchanged a panicked, rapid look with her mother. The condescension was entirely gone, replaced by a sharp, ravenous glint in their eyes. Lucas swallowed hard. "Mom, that means you're rich. Why did you hide this from us?" Clara looked at her son. It cut deep to see exactly how cheap his loyalty was. "I didn't hide anything," she said quietly. "I just didn't brag about it. And you never asked how I was doing. You only ever wanted to know what I could do for you. Thank you for being part of quiet revenge." AI tools may help with parts of our process, but every story is still carefully chosen, edited, reviewed, and produced by our team. If you'd like to help us continue creating these stories, please consider supporting the channel with the cost of a small cup of coffee. Patreon www.patreon.com/quiet-revenge family co-fi https://ko-fi.com/the story family PayPal https://www.paypal.com/paypalme/kanhuangmin. Your kindness truly means a lot. Chloe shifted her strategy in an instant. She slid forward to the edge of her seat and reached her hand across the table, attempting to touch Clara's hand. But Clara pulled back just in time. "Clara, you have to understand us. We were just coming from a place of love and worry. Family sticks together. If we had known how incredible this project was, we would have been right there helping you. Lucas could have done the heavy lifting, and my brother would have happily helped clear the grounds." You had your chance," Clara replied. 2 years ago, I asked you both to help me clean out the old attic. Lucas claimed his back was sore. You, Chloe, had a hair appointment. I filled the junk dumpsters entirely by myself. At 65 years old. Lucas lowered his head. "Mom, come on. That's ancient history. We're here now. And honestly, we actually do have a major situation where your support could change everything." Finally, the real motive for the urgent meeting was laid bare. Clara waited patiently. She had known about her son's financial missteps for months. She had seen the past due notices sitting on the dashboard of his car the last time he visited, to beg for money to cover a transmission repair. Chloe's dad's car dealership desperately needs an influx of capital to expand, Lucas said softly. The banks are being incredibly strict right now. If you could just lend us $1 million, or let us use the estate as collateral for a commercial loan. Chloe's father nodded quickly. It's a guaranteed investment, Clara. We'll pay you interest, higher than the banks. We're family after all. Family helps each other out of a tight spot. Clara zipped her purse back up. She looked at the faces of the people who just days ago treated her like an annoying chore. Family helps each other, Clara repeated. That's a beautiful sentiment, but help is a two-way street, not a system of exploitation. I worked tirelessly for everything I have, Clara said as she stood up. After your father passed, I took on the bookkeeping for 3 different local businesses just to protect my capital. I didn't take vacations. I turned the thermostat down in my bungalow during the winter, just so every spare dollar could go toward the contractors restoring the estate. She looked Lucas dead in the eye. Meanwhile, you took 2 luxury trips to the Maldives. You leased a brand new car you could barely afford. And now you expect my sacrifice to fund your extravagance. Lucas snapped, jumping to his feet. That's completely unfair. I'm your son. You can't take the money with you when you die anyway. What are you even going to do by yourself in a massive house like that? Chloe nodded aggressively in agreement. Exactly, Clara. You're pushing 70. What good is all this luxury to you? It would make way more sense if we all moved in together. We could manage the estate, and you could have a beautiful little mother-in-law suite on the ground floor. That way you wouldn't be so lonely. Clara almost laughed out loud at the sheer audacity of the proposal. She was expected to move into a guest suite in her own home, while Chloe took over the master bedroom. "I am not lonely," Clara said, her voice dropping to a temperature that made everyone in the room visibly stiffen. "I have friends, real friends who actually showed up for my birthday. We sat in the garden, drank coffee, and laughed. They didn't know a thing about the estate. They were there for me." She took a step back toward the front door. "I will not be backing any loan applications for your dealership. I will not act as a guarantor, nor will I be transferring any cash." Chloe's father slammed his hand on the table. "You can't do that. We practically finalized our business strategy based on a solution once we saw that TV segment. This is completely selfish." "I absolutely can," Clara said. Her voice wasn't raised, but it carried the absolute authority of a woman who had spent decades auditing financial balances. "The money is mine, the estate is mine, and my mind is made up." She turned her gaze to Lucas, who stood by the window with his arms tightly crossed, refusing to look at her. "Lucas, 6 months ago, I handed you your grandmother's vintage family jewelry because you claimed you needed money for a professional certification course. Yesterday, I saw Chloe wearing those exact diamond earrings at a high-end Italian restaurant downtown. You lie every single time you open your mouths." Chloe's face flushed a deep, angry crimson. "That was a gift from Lucas. It's none of your business what he does with jewelry you already gave away." "It tells me everything I need to know about your character, Chloe," Clara countered calmly. "And it proves to me that any financial help I give you would just disappear down a bottomless pit." She gripped her purse firmly. "I'm leaving now. First thing tomorrow morning, I am going to the bank to revoke the financial power of attorney I gave Lucas for emergencies. You will no longer have any access to my everyday accounts." Lucas spun around, panicked. "Mom, you can't do that. What if you end up in the hospital? Then I have my neighbor, Mrs. Gable, who holds my medical proxy," Clara said. "She's the one who brought me soup and checked on me when I had the severe flu last winter. You two didn't call for 3 weeks. The silence that followed was entirely different this time. It was heavy with the brutal realization that the quiet, older woman had taken absolute control. She wasn't a helpless widow to be manipulated. She was the architect of her own life, and she had just slammed the door in their faces. Over the next few days, Lucas tried calling Clara multiple times. She didn't pick up. Instead, she sent him a single text message. "I need space. If you want to talk to me, come alone without Chloe, but do not expect money." Lucas didn't come alone. He showed up on Friday evening with Chloe waiting outside in the car, her headlights cutting through the dusk. Lucas stood in the small entryway of Clara's bungalow. He looked smaller, defeated. "Mom, the dealership is facing bankruptcy," he said, his voice cracking. "If they close it down, Chloe loses her income, and I'm legally tied to the debt because I co-signed the primary business lease back then." Clara poured herself a cup of tea, completely unbothered. "You co-signed a major commercial lease for your father-in-law without asking me, without even consulting a CPA." Lucas gave a miserable, silent nod. "Chloe told me it was just a formality. We truly thought the business was thriving. You didn't think, Lucas. You just hoped for an easy ride," Clara said, taking a seat at her small kitchen table. "I am not bailing you out of this debt. This is the lesson you have to learn. When you sign your name to a contract, you bear the responsibility. But you have millions!" Lucas suddenly yelled, his desperation boiling over. "A tiny fraction of that would save our lives." How can you be so incredibly selfish? Clara looked at her son for a long time. She felt no anger left, only a profound, deep sadness for how weak he had become. Selfishness is reducing your mother's birthday to an afterthought, but showing up the second you want her money. Goodbye, Lucas. You made your bed. Now you have to lie in it. Lucas spun around, yanked the door open, and stormed out without looking back. Outside, Chloe honked the horn impatiently. 2 weeks passed. Clara spent her days at the estate. She planted vibrant new rose bushes in the courtyard, consulted with the artisans, restoring the intricate plaster ceilings in the grand ballroom, and simply soaked in the tranquility of the countryside. The property had become a true sanctuary, far removed from the toxicity of her family's greed. On the third Sunday after the confrontation, an unfamiliar car pulled up to her bungalow. It wasn't Lucas's Mercedes, nor was it Chloe's parents' car. It was a modest blue station wagon. Clara opened the door. Standing on the porch was her sister-in-law, Martha, the sister of her late husband. She was holding a fresh, homemade apple pie. "Hi, Clara," Martha said softly. "I saw the feature on TV, and I heard a bit about what went down with Lucas." Clara stepped aside to let Martha in, though she felt a sudden pang of skepticism. Was Martha here for money too? Had the others sent her to break the ice? They sat down at the kitchen table. Martha set the pie down between them. "I'm not here to ask for a single dime, Clara," Martha said, as if reading her mind. "Honestly, I'm here to apologize. I missed your birthday because I was out of town, but I absolutely should have called. I've let too much time pass over the last few years because I assumed you wanted space after Walter passed. That was a mistake on my part." Clara looked deep into Martha's eyes and saw nothing but pure sincerity. No greed, no manipulation, no flattery. Just the genuine regret of a relative who realized she had let a meaningful connection slip away. "The pie smells wonderful," Clara said softly. She reached into the cabinet and pulled out 2 plates. It was the very first step toward a real reconciliation, one built entirely on mutual respect, not a bank balance. Chloe's father's dealership ultimately had to downsize to a much smaller lot and liquidate half its inventory to avoid total bankruptcy. Lucas and Chloe were forced to scale back their lifestyle drastically. They moved into a cramped 2-bedroom apartment, and the leased luxury car was returned to the dealer. They stopped calling Clara entirely. Their pride couldn't forgive her for refusing to act as their safety net. Clara wasn't bothered by the silence. She had learned the hard way that shared blood doesn't automatically mean family. Family are the people who show up when there is absolutely nothing to gain, the ones who are there just to hold your hand or share a slice of pie. On a brilliant, warm afternoon in June, Clara sat on the expansive veranda of her fully restored estate. Architectural Digest had reached out requesting an interview for a feature on women preserving historical American architecture. Clara had agreed, but strictly on her own terms, no personal financial details, just a focus on the history, craftsmanship, and design. Martha sat in the chair next to her, peacefully reading a book. From the sweeping lawns below, the joyous laughter of the neighbors' kids echoed as they splashed in the newly restored pool. Clara took a slow sip of her coffee, looking out over the rolling green hills. Her life was quiet, beautifully ordered, and entirely free from the entitlement of others. She had drawn her boundaries clearly, right on time, and without a single regret. When her phone buzzed on the table, she saw a text from an unlisted number. It was Chloe. "We miss you. Can we come over for dinner next Sunday?" Clara didn't bother typing a response. With a single decisive click, she blocked the number. She had no room left in her life for people who only saw the value of the house, but never the value of the woman who built it. She put her phone face down on the table and smiled as a warm southern breeze brushed past. Thank you for being part of Quiet Revenge. AI tools may help with parts of our process, but every story is still carefully chosen, edited, reviewed, and produced by our team. If you'd like to help us continue creating these stories, please consider supporting the channel with the cost of a small cup of coffee. Patreon, https://www.patreon.com/Quiet Revenge Family co-fi https://co-fi.com/The Story Family. PayPal https://www.paypal.com/PayPalMe/Kanhuangmin. Your kindness truly means a lot.